Okay, well, being as the president of the APA, I'm eager to hear your habits along these spokes in the wheel of life that we've got here. And as I ask you to, I'm curious to hear in each of those as well. Here's what you do, but here's where you see some of the primary issues or the primary issue in each category for those who are, as we talked about in the first show, who are disconnected from their authentic self. I think it'll be eye opening for all of us actually. So we'll
Yeah.
start off with health here, literally
Mhm.
looking at what, so I'll start asking you, what do you do on the health side for your physical body, for, an exercise aspect and
Yeah.
nutritionally as well?
Yes, wonderful. So I developed a strategy of before I eat something to say to myself, I'm eating this because I love myself.
Hmm.
And that will stop us from putting some stuff in our temple because I think we have to shift it. Often we think about things that are not good for us as a treat,
Mhm.
right? And so you say reprogram, right?
Right, right.
Reprogram that, right? Because the thing that is not healthy is the way I reward myself. Like, do I want to live? Right? I want to live. I want to live. So, to be mindful about, so for me, eating lots of vegetables, drinking water, not drinking soda, eating in moderation, checking in with myself to know, am I actually hungry? Because sometimes people engage in emotional eating,
Mhm.
out of boredom, out of frustration, out of despair. And so the fruits and vegetables, drinking water, asking myself, is this like going to help sustain my life? Because I have goals, right? I
Yeah.
have things I want to do in my future. So that whole like eat to live,
Mhm.
and then recognizing movement. So I love dancing. I grew up dancing, and it's an important part of my healing. So there are a couple of terms people may or may not be familiar with. Embodied healing is one. Somatic therapy. So soma means body. Cultural somatic. So paying attention culturally to our bodies. And so I love African dance. I love modern dance. I teach sacred dance. During the pandemic, I got into walking because I was teaching in the same chair that I was seeing clients. I was just in the chair a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So it was nice to get outside and walk and then also play. So I have two children, one in high school, one in elementary. And so to get outside with my son and play is energizing for me and good for my body. I also, of course, love massage, and it's important to stay up to date with my physical health appointments, primary care, as well as the dentist, because often those who are stressed, we neglect ourselves. So, not going to the doctors or the dentist, doing emotional eating, um, and also, let me finally say on the physical, celebrating and accepting my body in its current state.
Hmm.
A lot of us hold ourselves hostage of like, if I lose this amount of pounds, then, or if I get abs, right, then
Yeah.
I'll love my body.
Yeah.
And then if you listen to people, a lot of them will say later in life they put on weight and they look back on this season and wish they had appreciated the season they were in because that was
Yeah.
actually a good season. So even if you're working to make it better, to also like give your self a lot of love and acceptance to push back against that body shame.
Yeah. Relationships is the next one.
Yes,
So family, friends, those relationships we want
right.
to nurture, that you want to nurture. What are some of the
Yeah.
habits you have in place for that?
Right. So, what I have developed is the importance of only having friendships and relationships that are mutual and reciprocal,
Mm.
because a lot of my work I am pouring out, right? So, when I am facilitating therapy, then the center is the client. When I'm teaching at Pepperdine, the center is the student. So, then I have to be very mindful of in my personal life there's that iron sharpens iron of being with people that it can be a give and take. And so, just one strategy I'll mention is I created a sisterhood circle, a women's circle that comes to my house once a month. We call it the Gathering. And these are all like powerful, brilliant women, and we can get in there and share our humanity.
Mm.
And it's not like up to one person to be the lead, but we really like support each other. And I've actually told other people about the group, and I know people in other cities who have started their own sisterhood
Oh,
circle as a
sure.
result of that. So I love it.
And where do we go relationally when we're disconnected?
Yeah. So, yeah, to have those places where we can be honest and transparent and present, and people who aren't going to judge or reject our imperfections.
Mental. I know that's a
Yeah.
big swath. That's your
Hmm.
playground right there. But mental health, mental state, what are some of the
Yeah.
specific habits that you employ for your own to be where you want to be?
Right. Yeah. So I would say uh, therapy and the expressive arts are really big for me in terms of my emotional health. So having spaces where I can process through, especially during the pandemic, I ended up full, but people knew you were home. So there was like a constant demand. And so needing to set that boundary that we talked about in the prior interview, setting the boundary to say, okay, I'm not taking on any more clients, and I actually need to get care for myself as I'm navigating these waters. Individual therapy is good. Also, dance therapy is great. As I said, I love dancing.
Mhm.
Um, Writing poetry is good for my mental health. Um, um, Swimming, getting in the water is good for my mental health. Yeah.
And obviously, we look at this. We talked about this in the first show. The depression that we're seeing the mental bad mental health is for you. Is it too simplistic to say that is just a response to being disconnected from the self?
Uh, that I'm sorry,
That it is just that in some ways it's that simplistic. Those are results, those are manifestations of being disconnected from the self.
right, and that there are events that often led to that disconnection. So it's
Okay.
not random that you got disconnected, right?
Right. Finance,
Yeah.
money. Talk to me
Yes.
about your habits there and where we
Right.
tend to, as we're disconnected, where we tend to violate financial wellness.
Right. So saving is important. Giving is important to me. Generosity. Let me say, open every bill. Because I think when we're in a place of either stress or thinking I don't have enough anyway, so like don't look at it or don't look at it and thinking it'll go away.
Yeah.
So, opening it up, being aware. And I will also say, to not wait till the end of life to take care of that paperwork around your finances, your what you want to happen to you in terms of your physical health, or decision making around that, but also around finances, what is going to happen, because I think some people are in denial around that, and it can leave family and friends in a very difficult spot. And so trying to be responsible in your planning and to not think, if I plan for end of life, that means I'm ready to die. It just means I'm getting my house in order.
And it's interesting you said that. Look at the bill. I mean, is that from a disconnected standpoint, often something that we do is just to avoid?
Right? That's
Okay.
it. And let it build, because you can say, well, it's going to stress me out. Well, okay, you're not stressed because you're not looking, but now we have an eviction, right?
Yeah.
So I need to know what's happening.
Well, as we talked about in the first show, a primary premise of you in psychology is bringing the spiritual nature into that, the spiritual aspect into that. That's the next spot here is spiritual. So, tell us about you and your habits and what you follow from a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah. So I do something called devotions. It's like my morning ritual to feed my spirit. And so, it can be reading sacred text, reading scripture, praying, meditating. Sometimes it involves music. Sometimes I'll get up and dance. Um, and that's important. I'll give you this example that I share in the book. I was working at a very toxic workplace, and I was walking in one day and the assistant director said, "You always seem so happy." And I get the feeling it has nothing to do with this place.
Hmm.
And I told her, you're right. If I was dependent on this place for my joy, I'd be miserable.
Yeah.
So I feed my well before I show up. So then I have something to give.
And in regards to disconnection, I am tempted to say that the primary thing we do spiritually is just that, because culturally it feels like we are more and more disconnected from our spirituality. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that the way that the disconnection can show up in terms of spirituality is busyness,
Mm.
perpetual busyness,
Yeah.
right? When people say, I don't have time to meditate, I don't have time to pray, I don't have time for, for a Sabbath, right? That I'm always running. And so when our self-worth or when the realities of poverty keep us in a state of perpetual motion, we're disconnected.
Career is the next one. And well, for you personally, obviously, you've got a lot going on in your career. You have your own practice. You've now become president of the APA. You now
I have to
have a
keep saying
book.
president-elect.
President
Yes.
elect. Yes. President elect of the APA. And
Yeah.
now a book. And you're doing
Yeah.
things that you weren't doing, like sitting here and
Hmm.
doing long interviews with people like me. So what are the habits that you're employing to keep your
Right.
career where you need it to be?
Yeah. So two things that come to mind. One is a dream team.
Mm.
So surround yourself with bright, inspiring, productive people. I think if you're, the only one in your circle that has big ideas, or if you're uncomfortable with other gifted people, that's going to limit you. That whole thing of like the sky is big enough for all the stars to shine. So like you don't, yeah, I don't need to be the only one with like good ideas. I think as you were saying before, when we talk about business, you're not going to be great at everything, but I know people, right? I know people who are good at that, so we can feed off of each other, and then
Yeah.
together we make each other stronger. And also, when I'm around people who are dream oriented, they're not trying to sabotage mine, right? Because they're trying to build their own, or they're not trying to talk me out of it saying it's impossible, right?
Right.
So, being around good people, and then I would say making up your mind that I'm going to be a completer. So, there are a lot of dreamers, there are a lot of visionaries, and they can have a whole lifetime of half done things. And so when I get an idea, so I had the idea to start the podcast, as you have, right? So let me keep it going. If I start the book, I'm going to finish the book. Just make that your mantra. I am not only a visionary, I'm a completer.
Goodness, that's strong. And from a disconnected standpoint, what do you see happening out there? We got a lot of volatility in the workplace and with employees and whatnot. Where do you see the disconnection is manifesting in what way?
Yeah, so I see self-sabotage when people, let's say, want promotion, but they come in late or they come in with a bad attitude. Or here's a big one where people think their work alone is going to promote them. So they do
Mm.
excellent work, but they don't speak to anybody, right? So this is, as we said before, this is relational.
Right.
So working on your people skills is going to be important for whatever it is you're trying to do.
Personal is the last one. And you've spoken to this a lot. Maybe you covered it already, but let me know. I mean, you dance, you swim, you walk, but these are the things we're
Right,
looking for, whether it's a massage, even self-care, but also
right,
just play, fun, hobbies, other
right.
interests. Anything we haven't
Hmm.
covered yet there for you?
Yeah. I think loving to laugh, which I think startles people because in psychology, my area of expertise is trauma recovery,
Mm.
right? But I remember I was working in an office suite with other therapists, and the therapist next to me, her specialty was eating disorders. And she said to me one day, I just can't believe your area is trauma because there's always so much laughter coming out of your office.
Wow.
And, I said, that's necessary. If like it's just going to be an hour every week of like doom and gloom and dread, like no one's going to show up for that. It's just too much. So there has to be like space for the painful truth, but also a lightness and a joy,
Yeah.
and giving people permission to like get back to living.
And from a disconnected standpoint, I feel like my concern when I look out at the culture is I see less people engaging with
Mhm.
these personal interests that bring them alive. Is that a
Right.
primary manifestation there?
Yeah, and one of the big ones we see now is this pressure to monetize everything. So if
Uh,
people have a hobby, they have to figure out how to make money off of it. So then now it's not a hobby anymore. Now you just have another business. So to give ourselves permission for pleasure, play, and joy.
Thema, thank you. Thanks for the behind the
Mm.
scenes, for the commentary on disconnected in regards to our habits, such a popular topic right now. I think it'll empower a lot of people. Thanks for being with me again.
Thank you for having me.